All right, we're 2 years into this thing. We've changed work forever. Now, what does it mean for burnout and employee engagement? We'll talk about that today on Culture Builder Live. Hey, this is Chris Wink. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Technically, the news organization with a community of technologists and entrepreneurs. I'm coming on location in my basement because I've been displaced from my typical recording location. The sunny environs. Talk about employee burnout. Yeah, you've heard about that. Employee retention. Yep, you've heard about that too. In this stage of how we've shaped work in the last couple of years. To do that, I'm joined by Jan Bruce. She's the CEO of meQuilibrium, which we call meQ. I've messed it up, Jan. We talked about this. Jan, thank you for being here.
My pleasure, Chris.
We knew it was, I failed you. meQ is what the kids are increasingly calling meQuilibrium. It is a workforce analytics and talent development company. Jan, I appreciate you enduring me. So, Jan, you guys yourselves do a lot of workplace analytics. So you think a lot about this. Your own company has gone through this. You're 125 employees. You've almost tripled your workforce in the last couple of years of the pandemic. Revenues up and the like. So you've thought a lot about this. Start me off with, we as a society have talked about burnout for a couple of years. Are we getting better at managing this? Because it sounds like a cliche now. Have we actually addressed the root causes we've been talking about for 2 years?
So, in a nutshell, I'll say it's one of the biggest problems that we face as business leaders today and HR leaders, that burnout's not getting better. It's one of the reasons that, so many companies are struggling to find ways to address, rampant burnout. We're seeing, burnout when we went into, in the middle of 2020, about a third of the workforce was saying they were burned out. A year later, it was up at 50%. And it's grown about another 20%. So it's not, it's a problem. It's one of the biggest problems HR leaders face today.
As an aside, how much do you, back of the envelope math, how much do you put that on the employer versus the moment in history we are in versus even our own individual journeys? Do you have a sense of how much blame you attribute to employers versus much bigger and headier times that are beyond anyone's control?
I think it's more useful to to sort of acknowledge that this is a big problem. Burnout is a major cause of not just absence and attrition, mental health problems, but also, it at a high level, it impacts the customer experience. When your people are burned out, it impacts your business and how customers feel. So, who, in a way, I'm going to be bold here, Chris. I don't know, I don't know if it's the times, the companies. It's got to be, it's got to be situational. But who cares? We got to address this, and what we do is address this problem by building more resilience into the workforce, so people can rise above it and get on with their lives and their work lives.
We'll be sure to drop links to meQuilibrium when the video recaps and below. But you're hitting on this. You're basically saying, like, as you said, who the heck knows? A mix of employers not responding quickly enough. Sure, the remarkable times we're in, absolutely somewhere there. But I almost have to say, like, things have shifted. We have watched at least a tripling of remote work and projected out to be a permanent change. We've watched as quit rates have remained elevated and talent demands have remained high.
Mm-hmm.
Employer bending for workers it's happening. Wages have grown, particularly among low-wage workers. Workplace flexibility is a watchword for everyone in team building. So we've done so much. We are adapting. So work's changed a lot. are we better off? Are our circumstances as the average American worker or any tech worker, right, wherever you want to go, are we better off than we were a couple of years ago as employees?
Yeah, so I think that it's kind of like a tale of two cities, but maybe a tale of three cities, if I can,
Mm,
tweak the phrase. I think that when we look across the data, and by the way, we gather a lot of data from leading, our customers who are leading, Fortune 1000, Fortune 200 organizations with, with workers all over the country and all over the world. But when we look at the data, what we see today is that a third of the population is what I would call struggling and suffering.
mm,
They need support, and those numbers are up from a couple of years ago. Maybe the scarier thing is that about 53% of the workforce is what I call surviving.
mm,
They're striving to get by every day, and I think that this, a whole bunch of forces, started by the pandemic, and then the rebuild is what I call it, which keeps starting and stopping and starting and stopping. But people are exhausted, and they are basically, surviving. And who wants to live by surviving? And that's, like out of every 100 people, 53 of them are just, if you poll them, they're saying, I'm just trying to get by right now. And then you got your 20% at the top who are thriving. Those are people who probably travel less, work from home very successfully. They have the space to work from home. For those people, it's been great. So, it's kind of a mixed bag.
hmm Yeah, and that idea of very different journeys has come up a lot. A year and or so, we were all obsessed with: is it going to be a K-shaped recovery or an S-shaped recovery? We were
Right.
having all these letters, and that was it was a very economic way of saying what you just shared culturally. So okay, we you argue that we're 2 years into having this conversation. We haven't gotten much better at burnout. We have improved the experience for the most in-demand workers, but lots of workers perhaps are getting, as you alluded to, a very mixed bag. Some things got better, some things got worse. So maybe we're just here. Um, what is your advice for employers? We technically, a big part of our audience are building teams around tech workers, but there's a real range of folks who are paying attention. What are you doing when you're talking to either clients or just others? What should employers do around um, concept of burnout at this stage? Because we've been talking about it for so long. I think I did an interview on burnout like 2.5 years. I mean, like 18 months ago. So what are we doing at this stage?
Yeah. So a couple of things. I'll take this on two levels. First of all, employers and team leaders need to know that the data is very clear. People need structure around hybrid and remote work. They are far less stressed and burned out when they understand clear guidelines for how we want, how we work successfully. So I mean, people need to know start times and stop times because you
Interesting.
know they work all day and all night and all weekend, and they need support that way. They need to know, if you want them to, what the rules are about being in the office and not being in the office. And by the way, there are a lot of employees, the data suggests that, at heart feel that they are disadvantaged. Their advancement is disadvantaged if they are not physically in an office, and that could just be stigma. It could be, that they feel like they're not being seen, so maybe they're going to be passed over. But it also could mean that they're not readily getting the kind of mentorship and structure that they need to advance. So leaders, managers need to be aware of that. Beyond the structure, I think there's some basic things, Chris, and I'll just, get it all out there so we can talk further. Self-care, stressing at a cultural level that we got to take care of ourselves physically and mentally. is, self-care is important. We charge our machines. We got to recharge ourselves. Employer support, and then giving people preventively the basic coping skills, the ability to, stay positive, stay empathetic, be able to focus and be mindful, and coping through adversity is very, very important. And it's clear that it reduces turnover.
So thank you for those. Let's actually, as you alluded, let's touch on a couple of points you made in there.
Sure.
One, structure might surprise some listening because, of course, we have remote companies on one side. We have the outliers that are still entirely in office. Here, you've homed in on the hybrid, which is the majority of where professional workplaces are right now. One of the perks is meant to be this maximum flexibility. So structure can feel like it's in opposition to that idea. So can you tell a little bit more about start time, stop time? Goodness, that might sound antithetical to the idea of the flexibility that the hybrid work's supposed to offer us.
Yeah, but the reality is that when people don't understand, I believe that at heart, people want to do a good job, and they are, without the guidelines for how you expect them to work, they can get very stressed out because it's just having too much open-ended. In fact, when you look at employees that are working in hybrid situations with clear guidelines, 88% of them feel connected to their job and their team. But those without clear guidelines, the numbers are only 65%. So people are more, people feel more connected when you spell out the expectations. They don't want to feel like they're bending the rules, and I think that, everyone wants, everyone needs to bend the rules from time to time. But in order to do that, you got to know what the rules are.
Let me play out an example. I am the parent of a soon-to-be 2-year-old. So I was part of this class of first-time parents in the pandemic. And
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. A couple of ended up doing my own reporting and interest in how new parenting in the pandemic era played out and how employers could support. One of the little examples that has played out in my head a lot for myself is working at 10 p.m. isn't necessarily a problem. Working until 10 p.m. is. The idea that, yeah, sure, you need an end state, but sometimes swapping hours, hey, I have to do some childcare here, and actually I perform better just doing some more of my internal communication work in the evening and scheduling emails for the next day is helpful. Right. That might not totally play with a structured start time, end time. Tell me a little bit about how
Yeah, but that's exactly what I mean.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what I mean. So when we give our employees guidelines that it's okay to to sign off at 5 or whatever time and do that work after hours, that no one's watching to see that you're not on, that or it's okay to shut down for 2 hours in the middle of the day because you're going to be back at night. What we find is that people who have that structure are half as burned out as people who have open-ended, that don't have the clear guidelines. So what I'm saying is, let's be honest about what makes, what we need to work hybrid. Like, for example, if it's not clear how many days a week you want to, you should be in the office, then people are always they have that nagging worry, like maybe I should be there another day, but this is Wednesday, traffic's terrible, I don't want to be there today. Or, I got a doctor's appointment with my child at 5 and it's taken me 6 weeks to get it. But you need to, if you're clear, then you have peace of mind, and that makes you less burned out, and it makes you more connected to the job.
Well, that is interesting. You're making me think of an interview I did in which it was in a somewhat different setting and context, but the idea of sharing, here are some example successful schedules. They are examples, but they are essentially conveying what flexibility can look like. Because I do hear you that I've spoken to those particularly founders, particularly CEOs who want to be like, I let anything happen. I'm the maximal flexibility. I can really hear how there's this criticism comes up with unlimited PTO, that sometimes unlimited PTO is sometimes the most restrictive because it's
Right.
when it's so open-ended, then there's
Exactly.
an unspoken cultural rule can bow. So I've had founders who said they really appreciate a specific PTO, and I expect you to use it all. Yes, we have limited, but you should use it all. So does that kind of play out as an example for you, like giving
It's a great
examples as one way to
example.
demonstrate? Yeah.
It's a great example. And the more we can help people understand, if we want them to be in the office 1 day a week, do we want them there at 9? Do we want them there whenever they get there? Do we want them there just to go to lunch? What do we want? Because the more people understand, I used to say structure will set you free. Structure will help you, and it helps the organization because it's healthier. And then people want that.
Sorry to cut you off there, Jan. I'm running short on time and I have to let you go here in a sec. This takeaway of structure, I think, is a really strong one. You also did touch on, of course, physical and mental self-care. This, I think, has come up way more with hybrid or even remote environments, because we kind of it was in the background when we were in a more traditional office environment. It's just brought to the fore. Maybe as a final takeaway, anything in that basket that you're finding yourself as effective or advising other folks in doing? How can people address the physical and mental self-care at this stage of these discussions?
I often say right now, managers are the new HR. People, I can't tell you how often I hear people say, oh my gosh, I just lost my SVP of, design. I had no idea how much she was struggling with her young child and making things work. And managers need to make it a priority for people. They need to make it a priority to talk to people and actively listen, but also stress that people need to take care of themselves. It's tough times out there. People need to make time to decompress and take care of themselves physically and mentally. And, we've all got to do our part to make that very front and center in the conversation.
Jen Bruce, CEO of meQuilibrium, a workplace analytics and talent performance and development company. Jan, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris. Take care.
That was this week's absolutely. That was this week's Culture Builder Live. As always, you have right here some additional videos to go check out, and below we'll drop links to both meQuilibrium and additional reporting. We'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody. Bye.